We just went live. I forgot to press the button for the live broadcast. For those of you who are watching online, we're kind of just getting into the point where we're talking about class cohesion. And I know we have some of our teachers that couldn't make it today, so I'm glad that we're able to do this. And this will be available for all of you to visit back on. So class cohesion, we just talked about the frequency. And I know that I'll be doing that in the beginning of the year, but it's something to think about when you're planning. That's why I'm so happy that we got a chance to do this as a book study in the summer, and then we're visiting about it right now, so that this can all be woven through your plans as we move forward. Does anyone have any questions so far? Let's open it up. All right. So one of the things is competition, and how often. Mike, can you speak on competition in class cohesion?
Yeah, I think kids have to build into it. I don't think it's something that you want to emphasize right away. There's plenty of activities that include either no competition. My favorite class cohesion activity of all time, I think we call it in the book balloon tap. Hands are taken in circles, keep a balloon in the air, add a balloon, make 3 balloons, etc. And it's really a lot of fun. Everybody's involved and engaged, and they're just working together. And that's what we're after on class cohesion. At some point, if you want to build a little bit of competition between groups, I think that's okay after kids are comfortable with one another, after they know that you have built this place where it's safe to do so, then I think you can start thinking about it. At some point, maybe some type of really friendly competition, but I wouldn't make class cohesion too competitive. It's more about building community and more about team building and more about working together, more about being able to communicate, being accepting of one another's viewpoints and opinions. And again, for the 5th time, just needs to be so that I can take a risk and I can make a mistake, and I know that mistakes are valued because they give the brain information to free education of what not to do next time. So those are all important considerations when you're considering student motivation in the classroom and class cohesion.
Thanks, Mike. So in chapter 8, we talk about reviewing content, and we just had a great example, Mike, before we came on. We talked about an example that most of us know from our school because it was done right in the middle of the field, very visible, and it was a way of reviewing content. And so why is kinesthetic a good way of reviewing content, Mike?
Well, I'll go to a certain activity that, again, is in the book. It's called cardio review, and it's something I'd suggest you start off with. Number one, it's very non-competitive. When you use movement to review content, first of all, it's very engaging. You don't have to take that brain break. You don't have to take that extra activity that you need to manage state or to get your kids back in focus. You're doing that through the activity itself. So it's engaging. There's movement involved, that you can create movements that you could equate to the answers. And the other reasons are sometimes it proves to be a fantastic assessment tool because you see what your kids know immediately by how they're reacting in the activity. Instead of having to go through 20 or 25 pieces of paper to know that information, you get to see it very quickly, and you can make a judgment about what you might need to do a review with one again. The other benefits of using movement to review content, oftentimes the answers are given in a way that other kids can see what the correct answer is. Or there's 5 other kids that might have the wrong answer, and they've given that answer also, and it's safe. It's just simply safe, and they can change their answer to the right answer. So those are some of the reviewing content through movement. And again, rather than having a kind of a stale seated review, which I'm not saying is wrong. Please don't misunderstand me. That's what's going to happen a lot of the time. I'm not saying that's bad or wrong. I'm just saying to add novelty to the classroom, to add movement to the classroom. This is a sound alternative way to really address the brain-body connection in the classroom that's always in play and always at work, and you have to be aware of it. So this is just an alternative rather than just having either kids that, the same kids that are answering the questions. You know, you get that, you know, who's the second president of the United States? Same four kids raise their hand, and we call on them, and we shut down the retrieval process of all the other kids that are involved. And some kids are fast learners, but they're slow retrievers. And you know, we have other combinations: slow learners, fast retrievers; fast learners, fast retrievers; slow learners, slow retrievers. So it really engages everybody, and in a safe way, and in oftentimes a fun way. Fun's a basic human need and a way to motivate. And it's not the point. The point is academic achievement, but it's certainly a great byproduct.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And one of the services I want to offer through this one, especially in review, is my services to you. If you have content that you want to make a kinesthetic review for, I'd be more than happy. I'd have so much fun doing that with you, to plan it out and develop some ideas. Yeah, so take advantage of me. That's what part of what I'm here for, is to support you and implementing this, especially when it comes to the review, because I can help you develop the games. In the next one, in teaching content, this is where we have to start learning to be creative in a new way, taking ideas and putting them into a learning experience. Does anyone have an example of this and how they approached it and would like to talk to the group about it? So in a way, sorry about that. In a situation where you are actually teaching the content through kinesthetic, through movement, through activity.
With vocabulary words, sometimes we'll come up with like movements to help the kids remember that vocabulary word. Like for money, they like wanted to do like ching ching or something like that. Or like government, they like came up with like shaking hands. So it kind of went to them, and we were like standing up, figuring out what's going to make you remember this word. Just really basic words.
So in the assessment, you'll actually notice the kids actually reference the memory, and they'll be doing the motion, right? Just, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other cues that you use, but you'll actually see the student remembering through that cue. Another one is, I can't remember the term. What is the word? It'll come back to me. Ms. Ford, do you want to share one? I know that you do this a lot.
Well, one we do is with first grade when we're learning the functions of the major organs. They actually act out all the parts. They'll act out being the blood and the oxygen. When we do the cardiovascular system with the balloons, they'll act out being the blood, transferring the oxygen, letting the oxygen go, stuff like that. Photosynthesis, we do it. All the different systems, they actually act out the systems. And then one person stands aside, one or two, and then when we freeze, and they'll describe what's happening.
Right.
So they get the movement, they get the vocabulary, and we switch roles around.
So embodied cognition was the term that I was looking for, and a lot of those are examples of that. Yeah, Ms. Kelly.
We do we tell this goofy little story that I made up 30 years ago with movement for short vowels. And the short vowels have a nickname. And I won't tell you the story because it's long. But anyway, the kids, you can see that when they're writing, they'll actually go like this to remember A says ah or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's always if it's a story, it's personal. If it's a song, if it's a dance, or it's a jig, they got it down.
Mm-hmm.
Something about.
And this goes back to what Ms. Ward was saying earlier is, you know, when you share your content and a learning objective that you want to get across, and you convey that to us, especially in my class, I can weave that into my objectives when it's appropriate. It's not always appropriate, but if I could find ways to weave that in, and we can do that with us as well. Mike, from your experience, Mike's worked with teachers from around the country and training and seen a lot of examples. So is there something you'd like to share with us about learning through kinesthetic?
Well, yeah, there's a lot actually. It's my favorite part of the framework, by your imagination. I'd like to go back to the first example that we heard about vocabulary. Just to give you an example, you know, this is an example I use with teachers when I'm doing professional development. Just for your SAT vocabulary words, so obstinate. So we'd say hard-headed, unyielding, obstinate, shocked at the rest of the time, whether it's a day, 2 days, a week, or a year. I'll explain that in a second. How that's remembered simply because of the movement that's attached to it. So that became part of my second book, Training in Motion. I told the story of a young girl, high school girl. I did a keynote at a high school on career day. And I went through this activity with them, 10 SAT vocabulary words. I went back a year later to do just a session, and I wasn't the keynote that day. I was just doing a session. She came up to me, she said, were you here last year? I said, yes, and she knew I was. And she went, now maybe she practiced it every day, but I don't think so. She was able to go through that entire list a year later. It just shows the power of, this is an example of how the brain prefers to learn. That's what you have to keep in mind. So sometimes when you feel like this takes more time, it actually, because the brain prefers to learn implicitly. Most school learning, and again, I'm not saying it's wrong or you should stop doing it, it's never going to stop. Most school learning happens explicitly through conversation, through reading, through lecture, et cetera, where it's more semantic based, it's more left hemisphere preferred, which really favors girls. We want to try and include learning structures which often happen through movement and emotion. And when you do that, you just offer the kids the opportunity to get things academically very quickly. Another example that I use, especially when I'm doing PD and I have a short amount of time, I do circumference and diameter, simple activity. You get people up into a circle, have one person walk around the circle, that same person walks through the circle, they count their steps, and you know the rest of it instantly. And I turn to them and I say, hey, do you think kids could go home that night and teach that in the kitchen? And they said, absolutely. Because there's so many advantages when you engage those parts of the brain, the motor cortex, the cerebellum, the cerebrum, episodic learning. Your brain is always creating a learning address for where you are when you learn something. So now you have an episodic reference to the information. It's really efficient as far as the brain is concerned. And there's just a lot of other sensory advantages. The brain stores information through sensory cues. And so there's a sensory use your body to learn as well. And when I go through the 6 key brain principles, which hopefully you've already read in the book, number 2 is the brain responds to movement. It's pre-programmed to learn through the movement of objects and people in its environment, and pre-programmed to learn through its own movement. That's how it really relates to the world and learn, especially as a young child. So it's really important that when we have the opportunity, again, Bob said it, it's not always appropriate, but when you do have the opportunity and can make something real and concrete for a learner, it's just going to stick a whole lot longer, and they're going to be able to retrieve it more easily. One more example, I go through a whole neuron when I do PD. I'll use the hand as a neuron. So dendrites, my palm is the nucleus, my arm is an axon, my shirt sleeve is the myelin sheath, and then we do something for neurotransmitters as well. They have that for good. And then I'll say to them, what are these? What are the dendrites? And I'll say, well, who can tell me, raise your hand if you can tell me what the hippocampus does, or give me 1 or 2 things related to the hippocampus. Like 1 or 2 people raise their hands. And I say, you know what, but I've been over it. I talked about it 2 or 3 times earlier in the day. But because we took those really fancy terms in a neuron, learning through our bodies, they have it for good. But they can't tell me anything about the hippocampus. And I tease them, I say, hey, I went over it, it's going to be on the test on Friday. So they're just you get to make the decisions about when to use it. But just understand the power in your hands when you use the body to learn when it's appropriate.
Yeah, so this isn't new, right? Raise your hand if you've ever used something like this, right? We've all done this, but the idea is to really take advantage of it, to support each other and build that community around this idea, and to share it more often so that other people can take advantage of those ideas, right? So one, helping you to feel more comfortable and understand why it could be so important and so impactful, but then 2, to create this community around this idea. So I know a lot of you still have a lot of practical questions like day-to-day, how does this work, where do we get equipment, things like that. I want you to hold off on that, because after we finish up with Mike, we're gonna talk about that. But while we have Mike here, are there any pressing questions from the reading, from the notes that you read, more theoretical, that you'd like to talk about?
I just want to acknowledge the overlapping between kind of the kinesthetic approach to what you're talking about, and also theater education,
Mhm.
like using drama in the classroom, drama-based instruction. Y'all are talking about the exact same thing.
Yep.
You know, it's the exact same stuff, getting kids up and moving and playing, just coming from two different angles.
Right.
So that's exciting to see.
Yes. Creative Action is a group, Mike, that we have has come here for professional development, also offers opportunities for our students. Yes, but very simple, similar, I mean, to what we're doing. Yeah, thank you.
My background is brain. I probably can tell that, and that's what I love. This all came from that background. And when I sit in a school, when I was working in a public school, my last job was in a junior high back when they had junior highs. I would love schools, and I would think about the brain compatibility of drama and musical and the dance, and those kids probably got more out of that experience than any other schooling they had, just because it looks more like real life than anything else that goes on in a school. You can look to sports as well, but when you have to really refine and create a product that you have to do for 1, 2, 3, 4 nights, it's just incredible. And the community that's being built, you are exactly right. Everything we've been talking about, that is great that you're using that when you can in the classroom.
I just want to offer up one thing that I changed last year, and it was in the book. I was so tired of sitting in that big circle and like going around and letting kids say like talk about their weekend. Like by the time you're like halfway done, you're like, oh, just come on, get it over with. Like, we start our day. So I ended up having like the kids like saying, okay, if I say an even number, I want you to get in a group of 3 and talk about your weekend. If I say an odd number, or I did it the other way, even 2, odd 3. And so they were moving, now they're talking, now they're changing, and not everybody's having to sit. Like, I don't think I'll ever go back to sitting in a circle, everybody say their weekend, because I don't think it does anything for the kids, and if I can't sit through it, then I definitely know they can't sit through it. So, you know, I just thought that was really cool to find it in there, to find ways to get them up, moving, talking, sharing. It's not the typical sit down and listen to, you know, all 22.
I like that.
Yeah, and if we put music with it as well, like you could then share or find a partner or whatever.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, movement, you bring up a great point also. Movement can be very subtle. It doesn't have to be this crazy brain break. It doesn't have to be this fantastic, lesson on neurons. It can be active standing. You know, researchers are showing more and more that we should really look at standing as the norm and sitting as the break. In our culture of sitness versus fitness, to quote Jean Moyes, we look at sitting as the norm and standing as the break. We should really be turning that around a little bit. That's kind of the mindset I'd love for you to go with. That these are brain-body creatures with physical and emotional needs that need to move, just get blood flow around the brain and body. And you can do it in so many simple ways, just like what you were saying, with partnering activities. One of my favorite activities, and I don't even think it's in the book. I use the clock activity. You know, you go around, you get a 1 through 8, no repeat signers. And then you've got your clock partner for the day, for the week, for the month, however you want to set it up. Then you say, okay, get together with your 2 o'clock partner, and I want you to discuss this, this, and this, or 3 reasons for the beginning of the Civil War. And one of my favorite quotes from Eric Jensen is, the kids who do the doing and the kids who do the talking do the learning. And they can do the talking sitting down, but they can also do the talking sitting or standing up. So I think it's important that you can just, have movement in the classroom, and it meets that need that we're talking about. So yeah, thank you for your comments. And one more thing about that
Mike?
Clock activity. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm still here.
Mike, we're breaking up a little bit here.
Okay.
Kind of,
How about now?
Now we're good. Go ahead, try again.
Okay. Yeah, one more thing about that clock activity. If you're going to use that, if a kid can't find a 7 o'clock partner because the numbers don't work in your room, and I say get together with your 7 o'clock partner, and he doesn't have a 7 o'clock partner, he gets what's called a power card, and he can go to any pair to make a conversation. So he gets to choose if he doesn't have that specific partner.
Sorry,
So
Mike, you're breaking up again here.
I love technology.
Yeah.
Am I back yet?
You're back.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that breaking up to everybody and to Mike. So we're going to actually go ahead and sign off because it's getting kind of challenging and we're kind of running out of time here. Mike, I want to thank you for your time. And we will be visiting one more time. And our hopes here at the school is after we've gone ahead and implemented this in real time with real kids, that we would come back and revisit in September sometime or early October and kind of be able to share with you our successes and then work through some of our failures and how we could work together to fix those. So, Mike, again, thank you for your time. And yeah, if you're ever in the area, we definitely want you to come out to the school and come visit us.
Okay. I get to Texas would be great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Mike. I'll check back in with you later on.
Okay. Take care.